Hello, everybody. Um, Today, I'm very proud and very happy to introduce a personal friend of mine, Guy Poreh, um, because we're going to talk about a subject that we touched a few weeks ago on Veterans Days. Those of you that joined us back then, we were talking about veterans and we were talking about the phenomena of PTSD. And today we have a special guest, Guy Poreh, who is, like I said, a friend of mine. Actually, I knew him for more than 15 years when he used to be the advisor to or consultant to the foreign ministry um, in the space of branding and PR. And 15 years later, or actually 10 years later, when I was consul for public diplomacy in New York, we met again when Guy moved to New York. And again, we were talking usually about PR, about business, about work. And all these years, I noticed that Guy is very creative, but always what I also noticed that he was very unique because it always he had a smile on his face. In general, a very happy person. What I didn't know is what he's actually telling in this book. And until this book came out, I didn't know about the other side of Guy or the other life that he had before. Um, if I would quote him, I think that I knew more the phoenix and I never knew the dragon. And he will explain what he means when he uses these terms. So today, he's the founder of Playground, he's a CEO, and I'm very happy to introduce author of the book Dragon Phoenix, Guy Poreh. Please, Guy, floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Wow, 15 years. You just dated me, but thank you, Galit. And thank you, everybody, for joining me. It's an honor, and I really appreciate you guys taking the time and being here with us. And you know what? Let's dive in. I've even gone one extra step, and I have got a deck for you. Isn't that exciting? So we're going to start. Let me share my screen 1 second, and hang on. Okay. Sorry about that, folks. It always happens with technology, and we're in the 21st century, but we're going to start, first of all, back in the 80s. With the 80s, for those of you who lived it, probably the greatest decade in terms of music and TV and pop culture and everything. And it's a decade where I kind of when I grew up, and you'll see why it's important later on. So, for those joining us now, my name is Guy Poreh, and thank you again for joining me. I am the author of Dragon Phoenix, a book about how to overcome PTSD and reclaim your life. Before we begin, I would just want to say this. I'm not a doctor, I'm not a shrink, a psychologist, a psychiatrist, or anything like that. What I am is a person who had PTSD, and this whole book and what we're going to talk about is my own personal experience and what I think I can give to others. So let's begin. So as I said, I grew up in the 80s, and at the end of the 80s, I was called to the Israeli army, just like everybody else. And just like everybody else in the 80s, I loved the movie Top Gun, and I wanted to be like Tom Cruise, and I wanted to be an F-14 fighter pilot. I did get accepted, but then the army had other plans for me, and after a few short months, I was in the artillery. By the way, this is what sucks about Zoom, because whenever I do this standing up in front of people, I show this, the artillery, and everybody's clapping and going wild. I have no idea why, but if you feel the urge to clap and go wild, please do. So I was in the artillery, and our job was protecting Israel's borders from terrorists, which was great. But in 1993, at the like this, we're not in the 80s anymore. We're now in the 90s. I was stationed, I became an officer in the Israeli artillery. As you can see, I had a fine group of men with me, which was fantastic. And we were sent to safeguard inside the Gaza Strip. Some of you probably know it personally. Some of you probably know it from Fauda, which was created by a great friend of mine, Leo Raz. And we had to fight against terrorists within the Gaza Strip. And then what happened when I was chasing terrorists down, we got into a fight. A hand grenade was thrown from one of the corridors across the street, landed right next to me, and I was blinded. That's why you see the whole thing. I was blinded and lay in hospital without eyesight and going through, I think, was 4 surgeries over a period of what I thought was 2 or 3 months, was actually a year. And that's one of the things that happen, I guess, when you get injured in the army or in any kind of very violent confrontation is, and you go blind, time has a very, very different meaning and passes in very weird ways. Obviously, once I was there, I started getting all these signs and let's say behaviors of PTSD, sounds that would trigger certain emotions, from rage to going to shell shock to everything else. And this is while I was blind and while I was in hospital. And first of all, not knowing if I would ever see again. Not only that, I went through what I call today the pancake period, just so that we can be on the same page. The fantastic doctors in Israel managed to somehow stitch the remains of my eyes together, both eyes, by the way. And in order for them to, think about, they take the eye and they need it to be round. So they insert this kind of gas in, and then in order for the eyes to be completely round, it had to be 2 hours on my back, 2 hours on my face, 2 hours on my back, 2 hours on my face, like a pancake, not for one day, for weeks and weeks and weeks. But it worked. And I can say that while I was there, I had the support of my family and my friends. Everybody was with me. And I got through it. And after what I thought was 4 months, again, it was 4 years, I went home. And if we go back to the 80s, I was allowed to be hospitalized at home. I still couldn't see. And at that time, here's a funny thing, I'm going to date myself a little more. We had cassette tapes and maybe a CD, but mostly cassette tapes, and I couldn't see. So I could only basically listen to the one cassette in my tape. And it had these 4 bands on it: Metallica, Bon Jovi, Tears for Fears, and Pixies. And I used to listen to them on repeat over and over and over again. The question you should be asking is, why don't you just ask someone to switch tapes so you could listen to something else? Well, here's the thing. And this is something that's kind of like you'll see as a kind of thread through the whole story. When you get injured, especially when you're an officer in the army, there is a huge deal of ego involved, and there's a huge deal of pride involved, and it's all been hurt. And the last thing you want to do is ask for help. So it might seem a little thing, but just imagine months over months over months listening to the same goddamn songs. Sorry, they were beautiful songs, but the same songs over and over again because you're too proud just to ask for someone to do a simple thing because you are supposed to be able to do it. And going through that period obviously leaves you very alone. You feel very rejected. You feel like your life is going, it's kind of like split. You were supposed to go on this path. You're now going on that path, and you don't want to go on that path. But it's kind of like the life that somehow you got and you were sent onto. And not only that, I think you guys need to remember this happened to a 23-year-old kid. So when you go out of the hospital, when you're in society again, and thank God I had amazing friends that we used to go clubbing a lot when we were kids. So the first thing they thought about was, hey, Guy's out, let's take him out clubbing. And then you realize it's not that simple, because when you go out, people look at you. I don't know how much you can see, but you're suddenly that freak with one eye, and you get rejected a lot. It's not rejection. I don't even approach people, but people look at me weird, and girls would go by me like, what's that? And all that, everything's going on. So take into the fact that your life has just been completely blown out of place. People look at you weirdly, they treat you weirdly, and you suddenly have these symptoms that you never even thought, would happen to you. Again, from walking around and then hearing, let's say a trash can falling, and you think it's a grenade next to you. I have good friends that have PTSD now, that whenever they hear the of the doors opening on a bus, they think it's an RPG missile coming their way. And it's not just, oh, it's an RPG missile coming. You go into shock. Your body tightens up. You have a hard time breathing. It's not a pleasant ordeal. It's not a pleasant ordeal. And take everything that I'm saying and add on one factor that the doctors that were constantly checking up on me, and thank God for them, basically said to me, look, by the time you reach 40, you will be blind. We have no idea how we succeeded putting your eyesight back together again, at least in one eye. And by the way, they did a fantastic job, and I'm very grateful for them. But they did say that I would be blind by 40. Now, when you're 23 years old and you're told that you're going to be blind by 40, that puts your whole life out of whack. It just changes everything. It puts you in a very dark place. And it's kind of, you feel that life has given you something that you can't deal with. Just think about it. You're being told you have, at tops, another 20 years to see. Now, when you say that to a 23-year-old, it's like saying to him, you have another 17 years maybe to live, because that's how powerful that is, that message that they gave to me. And so here's the thing. I was in a very dark place, as you can see, but I realized something. No matter what they said to me, we always have a choice. We always have a choice, even if it's that dark. And you know what? The best choices are also usually the hardest. They're the hardest to, not to make the choice, but to follow up on them. And I decided that F them, I'm going to live. I don't care what people said. I'm not going to go blind. I don't care what everything is happening around me, where people are coddling me and my body freezes up when there are loud noises. I don't care. I'm going to do something about it, no matter what the outside conditions are. And I started actively looking for inspiration and looking for things to get me out of this rut. And I came across a few things that I knew to be true from the Army, by the way, like the sentence that our greatest weakness lies in giving up. The most certain way to succeed is always to try just one more time. And here's the thing. This could be one of those aspirational quotes that some people believe in, some people don't. But I saw with my own eyes what happens when you give up. And I'll give an example. Before I got injured, a soldier in our regiment got injured as well. Bullet went into his muscle, leg muscle, out the other side. Clean wound. Okay? In other words, he was supposed to be in hospital getting treated and out of the hospital in 3 weeks. Mentally, he gave up. He just gave up. He went into a funk, he went into depression, and his body followed through. So instead of leaving the hospital within 3 weeks with just like a hole in his leg that could have been a really cool scar, he started to get gangrene. And they were this close to cutting off his legs. The doctors didn't have much to do, so they brought in a psychologist that worked with him. And through his mind, his body, they'd say didn't get better, but they at least didn't have to cut off his leg. And when I saw that, I kind of figured out, okay, our mind is way more powerful than we think and can lead to very good or very dangerous situations. And it's one thing that I said, okay, I know this now. I'm going to use this as a tool. I knew that if I could change my mindset, I could change my life. Easier said than done. And I said, I went on a trip to find inspiration. And I'm sure you guys have all seen this movie with this guy, Rocky Balboa, where he has something happen to his life and he trains for it and then goes on a match and he wins, an inspirational story. And I love that. And while I was watching one of the Rocky movies in my funk, I started researching and realized there's a story. Some people say it's the only story, but it's the story that's been around for thousands of years. It's called the hero's journey. Basically saying a person gets called to adventure, they start that adventure, they find a mentor or helper. Think about Rocky, he's training, he gets called to a fight against Apollo Creed, the world champion, and so on. He gets a trainer, and then they go through challenges, and so on. They hit rock bottom. The journey hits rock bottom, but then the hero has some kind of transformation, some kind of atonement. They get what they want, which is the gift of the gods, as it says here, of the goddess. And then they go home, a changed person. And I kind of figure out, you know what? Maybe, just maybe, that's what I'm going through. And I knew that if I could put it into my mind that is what I'm going through, things could change. But I couldn't just do it myself. You'll soon see why we have this handsome person here. While I was trying to interact socially, it was really hard for me. Again, people look at me at the one-eyed freak, 23-year-old walking through the streets, sometimes with a band, the patch over my eyes or something else. I just couldn't bring myself to start the hero's journey. I was slouched. I was unconfident, you could say. And I knew I couldn't survive this way. It's just no way to live. So I decided to take on a persona. In other words, I decided to be Captain Kirk. This is true, by the way. I decided to be Captain Kirk. Now, that doesn't mean that I went around telling people, hey, I'm James T. Kirk. No, that'd be even weirder. I'd probably be hospitalized at some point if I did that. But no, he was one of my heroes growing up because he was always debonair and charming and a leader and so on. I decided, just like an actor gets deep into a part and starts living that person, that I would do the same. And in every situation, social situation I'd be in, I would try to be James Kirk. But again, Captain Kirk from Star Trek, if those of you who haven't realized yet. But again, it's not a pretend kind of thing. I was deeply in belief. It wasn't even a belief. It was like a knowledge that I was him. This is how I would act as him. This is what he would do if I was here. This is how he would talk to that girl if he was here. This is how we would do that job interview if he was here. I would go deep into it and let that persona come out of me. And it made things much easier. It's like, there are things that are happening around the world. Okay. I need to get a job interview. As I said, the economy sucked. We didn't have enough money, whatever. It didn't matter because I could control what was inside, and that was how I controlled it. Not only that, it was like magic, Dr. Strange again. It was like magic, how it affected my mind and how it affected the way I talked and how it affected the way I interacted with people and how it affected my outcomes. And it was probably the most exciting thing for me, because during the day, at least, I could control my thoughts. I could control what was going on with me. At night, it was a completely different story. I'm not going to tell you because it's in the book. But at night is where the demons of the PTSD came out. But during the day, I could control it. It was my choice and my mind that could control what happened next. And this is how I controlled it. I've always wanted to be in a creative endeavor. Okay, I love movies, I love television, I love ads and so on. I decided I'm going to go into advertising, just like the madman here. And the reason I decided to go into advertising is this. I figured I've started to take some kind of control of my life, and I only have a few more years to see. I want to see the world. I don't care. I want to see the world. I want to live as much as I can. I want to go out as much as I can. I want to party as much as I can. I will be surrounded by great and creative people. So I decided the best place for this would be advertising, of course. But not only that, whenever I went to a job interview in an ad agency, I would just say, look, no matter what happens, 3 months out of the year, I'm going to go traveling. And that was probably the only industry that said, okay, sounds great. Come back with great ideas. I was like, yeah. So I did. I traveled around the world. I traveled mostly to beaches around the world, but all over the world, from Australia to Fiji to Thailand to Africa, wherever I wanted to see the world, and I did. I was accompanied by great friends that helped me along the way. And once I kind of deeply incorporated those personas and started to take control of my thoughts and the way I live, things started to happen. So I went into the ad world. I started my own company after a short while called Red Interactive. We were then bought in by BBDO. In Israel, it's called Gitam, for those who are in Israel. And BBDO is the largest advertising agency in the world and also the most awarded. Amazing people. And while I was there, I won awards. As you can see here, these are Cannes Lions that I won. And I even managed to find a really good-looking girl that would agree to be my wife, which is surprising. I'm the freak with one eye. Remember that. It's always in my head. And with my wife, and thanks to BBDO who pulled me over, I got to New York, where I met Galit, the highlight of New York, of course. And we've been living there. We lived there for 7 years, and we have these two gorgeous sons. And all this happened after my 40th birthday, the birthday in which I was supposed to stop seeing, if you remember. I even started my own company later on called Playground, which helps most Israeli startups, but all kinds of startups, move into the US and succeed there in terms of marketing and so on. And I figured out there's a story, and it's worldwide, and it's the same story all over. And it's a story about perseverance, and it's a story about passion, and it's a story about resourcefulness. And it's the story that I had to create for myself to get over the conditions that I was in. And it took me 25 years to realize what I had done, and to realize that the way I got out of my situation, doing air quotes, got out of my situation, is something that I can give to other people. So I set out, after 25 years, I set out to write the book that I wish I had. And if any of you read the book or bought it, first of all, thank you very much. I appreciate it. It's a very small book. It's very short. It's like 60 pages, because that's the book that I wanted to have when I was going through what I was going through. I didn't want these long stories about what happened to people and so on. I just wanted a map. Just tell me what to do, and so I can try it, and maybe it'll work for me. And that's what I did. I wrote that book. I wrote that book with a map to help people in very limiting circumstances to have tools and some inspiration to get out of what they're going through. And hopefully what I went through would also help them. And then I realized that I was on a hero's journey, that it's my own personal journey. And each one of us is the hero of their own personal journey. And it's going to look completely different from everyone. But at the end, there is that gift of the goddess. There is that pot of gold for everyone, whatever that is for you. But don't get me wrong, it's not a smooth journey. It's not that I had PTSD and now I don't. I still have nightmares. I still freeze up when certain things happen or when I see something. And every morning when I wake up and I have to put drops into my eyes, the medication, and I have to do all certain things that I need to do for my eyes, I am at the abyss. Look at the bottom, you'll see there's the abyss of death and rebirth. Every single morning, I find myself there. And then forcefully sometimes, I remind myself, that's okay. Because from the abyss, there's that whole journey on the way back. And that's what I look for just about every day. And I thank you, everybody, for listening. Thank you very much. And if you have questions, now would be a good time.
So thank you so much, Guy. It was fascinating. And yes, we do have some questions. Maybe I would ask the first question that I was intrigued. You said that you wrote the book because you needed a map, someone
Yep.
to hand you a map to know where to start. So first of all, do you think that your map can suit everybody with some small adaptations? And if you have the answers, why a book? Why not become a mentor? Why not making this the mission of your life?
Okay, first question, can it suit anybody else? You know what? I'm going to be humble, and you don't think I am but I don't know. I hope so. I hope that people read it and try it and see if it works for them, because I think if it got me out of where I am, it can suit everybody else. And why not make this a mission of mine? Well, you know what, Galit? I think that's what I'm doing right now. I've had 25 years before I could bring myself to the point to actually write about it and talk about it. It might seem that I'm talking about it freely now, but I'm not, or I couldn't before. Even you knew me 15 years. You didn't know about my past because I never talked about it. I needed to get to a certain point, and I'm at that point now. And maybe I can make it my mission to help others. Maybe.
Thank you. You want to explain to us the name of the book? Why do you call it Dragon Phoenix?
Yeah. So the name of the book comes from something that I realized during a very horrible night. We won't go into it now, but it goes like this. There is a reason people get enlisted in the army at the age of 18. By the way, in ancient times, it was 13 and 16. You're young. You feel powerful. You feel there's nothing that can stop you. You're a dragon. You're a very powerful dragon, and when you're in arms, you're a fire-breathing, powerful dragon. That is exactly how you feel. Even if you don't say it, it's like if you look at soldiers, the way they stand, the way look, it's how you are inside. And when you suffer an injury, and especially have PTSD afterwards, the dragon dies. You're not that dragon anymore. You're not that confident person anymore. You're not that person that you suddenly can get hurt. You feel very vulnerable. And the reason it's called Dragon Phoenix is because people need to understand there is a way to let that dragon die and go into ashes and then rise again as something else, as a phoenix, just like the phoenix rises out of the ashes. That's who you could be. You could transform from one mythological creature to another.
Thank you. So I'm gonna raise some questions that people from the audience are asking. First of all, you're getting a lot of compliments and a lot of thank yous for sharing your amazing story. We
Thank
have a
you.
question from Ariel is asking, what was the greatest challenge you faced and the most uplifting or unexpected learning experience?
You'd be surprised, but the greatest challenge I faced was going back into public. Moving out from the hospital to my parents' place, it was kind of like I was in a safe space. I was taken care of by doctors, and my parents and my friends would come visit all the time, and my army buddies would come visit all the time. And it was kind of like a cocoon in a safe space where everything was okay. My greatest challenge was that first day when my buddies decided, hey, let's go out. Enough staying at home. Let's go out. Let's go out into public. And I knew that I couldn't see well. by the way. I could hardly see. I couldn't see in the sun. By the way, today, even today, if you see me, I'm always with sunglasses because my eyes are cut. I have no sun dilution. And again, I was a guy with one eye. And that was extremely, extremely, extremely hard for me. And it was extremely hard to the point of, I would say there were even times when I was like, how do you say, petrified, where you physically, I couldn't take that step outside my door. I had to force myself. I think that was kind of like the hardest part. And then the second part, what was the most uplifting? Oh wow. Look, the great thing I can tell about my journey is there were so many uplifting moments. So many. But I think the most uplifting moment was when I've got two younger brothers. And they would be with me all the time. And the most uplifting moment I can think of is when my brothers, each at their own time, came to me and told me how much I meant to them, and that I was always the person that they would lean on and look up to. And that just, even at the condition that I was then, that just kind of fueled my engine. That just raised me up and made me realize there's no way I'm giving up on this, because there are people who are relying on me, and they're my family and my close, my beloved family.
Okay, thank you. I want to thank people from who joined us through Israel and Lithuania and are watching us
Thank
also now.
everybody that joined. I do not take this. First of all, I take your time very seriously, and thank you for joining.
So we made this not only a Florida event, but a global event, and we're very happy because you're really fascinating. You're really a very special guest. We have a question from Ruta. She's asking, what would be your advice to all the former soldiers who currently live a civilian life after their service? Maybe not necessarily suffering from PTSD, but trying to move from a military life to civilian life.
First of all, I'd say realize that what you went through in the army, what you went through in the military, gave you tools, whether you liked it or not. They gave you tools. They gave you great tools to understand how to live in the next phase, whether it's managerial tools if you were, an officer or commander or some kind, whether it's tools of how to operate things. You have tools and you have training, and you went through a lot. That means it can go through, and everything on the civilian on the outside is easy. Take those tools, make them part of you, and go out and use them. You'd be surprised that a lot of people out of the military think that, okay, I'm out of the military, I'm into something else, and it's just like clean slate. I don't know anything. Oh my God, this is so overwhelming. On the contrary, you were trained and you were equipped for the next stage. So go out and enjoy it and use what you got.
Thank you. Another question from Mariana. She's asking, has the book brought you a closure with your PTSD experience? You said you're not over it, but did it bring any kind of closure? And I will add my question to this. Why did you write the book now?
Okay, so the first part is, did it bring me closure? I won't say closure, but there's one thing I can say for sure. I feel a lot lighter. I feel a lot lighter. I feel that I know some weight has been lifted off. A lot of pressure has been lifted off. I don't know how to explain it, but it's what it is. And why now? Maturity. Maturity. Up until the age of 40, again, you got to remember, until the age of 40, there's that sign that was always over my head. You're not going to see past the age of 40. Okay, so once I crossed the age of 40, I was kind of like, I beat this. That was like, let's put it this way, from 23 to 40 was my very selfish stage. It was just about me. It was about me and living life to the fullest before I go blind. From the age of 40, it was like, okay, I did this. Now let's build. What people do in their 20s, I did in my 40s. Okay, now let's build. And then came this stage, especially, and I think the corona, the whole pandemic and what we've been going through might have helped. It was kind of like, okay, I'm okay now. Now it's time to give to the others. And I guess that's why. It's the only way I can explain it. But in reality, it came from here. It's kind of like, it's time. It's time you wrote about it. It's time you put it out into the world. It's time you helped other people.
What kind of reactions do you get from people who know you, like me, who knew only the phoenix and didn't know the dragon was somewhere back in your past and didn't know about the struggles of the phoenix? It's too philosophical. People
Yeah, no, it's
guy as this guy that is smiling now and never knew the story behind. And now the book came out and you started talking about it and you give lectures and how people react to you, people that are close to you.
That is a great, great, great question. There are two kinds of reactions, just two that I've noticed. One is complete disbelief, as in, oh my God, I didn't know this, you went through this, and wow, kind of. And the other reaction is kind of like, is this bullshit? Because a lot of people, I mean, like yourself, they see me as the post-Captain Kirk persona. So a lot of people don't believe that I went through what I did. And you know what? I love both reactions. The first one, because I'm glad people now know what I went through and can sometimes understand my weird behavior, which comes out every now and then. And I also like the second reaction because it means what I did worked. And people didn't look at me as some kind of, oh my God, he has PTSD and he went through what he went through. I was like a normal person. And that's all I really wanted.
That's nice. um, we have a question here from Dr. Arlene. She wanted to know if you used to write when you were a child.
Write only for school. I mean, as a child, I'd write, I'd write those silly stories that you do as a kid, like 1 pages of one day I will be a superhero kind of thing, but that's it. No professional writing.
um, there's a question, anonymous question. What would you suggest to people who experience difficulties talking about their traumatic experience?
Don't force it. That's the one thing. The one thing I would say is be true to yourself. Don't put yourself in situations where it's too hard for you, because some people say the more you talk about it, the more therapeutic it is. You'd be surprised, but I am the opposite. I never talked about it because it would kind of it would bring out emotions that I didn't want to deal with. So what I can say is, if you're having trouble talking about these things, don't. Wait till the point where you are comfortable with it. Work on it. There are tips in the book, but work on it in terms of maybe creating a persona, maybe meditating, maybe starting a venture. I find that really helps because it keeps your minds over of something. Get to a point where you can, and it's okay. Take your time. There's no rush.
Another question, did you seek for professional psychological help?
No. Again, I'm not saying it's the smartest thing in the world what I did, but was right for me. When I was injured, as I said, I was still in the dragon phase, right? So I was very proud. I was moved by ego a lot, and I wanted to do it myself. I did not want to do, and I was in denial. First of all, I was in denial, which is for me worked. And the last thing I wanted to do was go to a psychologist, especially a good one, by the way, who would be able to take away those layers of denial and dig deep and make me talk about or feel about what I went through. I didn't want it. I wanted that cocoon. I wanted that protection. So I never went to a psychologist. Again, I'm not recommending it. I'm just saying that's what worked for me.
Okay. Any more questions from the audience? Please write in the Q&A. I don't see additional questions. I think you're talking there is a question here. Are you donating any monies from the proceeds of sale of the book?
Oh, great question. First of all, it's very flattering because it seems like the book is like a #1 bestseller on the New York Times. So no, it's not #1 bestseller. It is selling, but it's not #1 bestseller. I always donate. Every year, I donate to Argun Nechei Tzahal in Israel, which is the Israeli the body that governs injured veterans, and to the FIDF. I do that every year, and I'm very proud of it. And I donate when I can.
Guy, I think you first of all you donated already much more than money. I think that first of all, every soldier that is being wounded, injured during you're fighting, so he gives much more than money. Second, I think your presentation was amazing. You were sincere. You shared with us. Thank you so much for sharing. And there's a feeling that you really shared what you think is what you told us. I think that people with PTSD, without PTSD, or people that have around them people with PTSD can learn a lot from your presentation. And I'm sure that our audience is looking forward to read your short roadmap, as you called it, your book, and I'm pretty sure that everyone that reads it can relate to it some way or another. I want to thank you very much again for joining us and for sharing with us. I see amazing, if you will go to the chat, you will see also amazing reactions. And I think you were one of our most interesting speakers so far since I'm here. So thank you again. And I'm looking forward to renew our monthly lunches in New York, in Israel, in Miami.
So first of all, thank you. Thank you so much for having me. Thank you, everybody, for being here and asking those questions. And yeah, definitely Miami. We did New York. We did Israel. Let's do Miami now.
Okay, I'm waiting. Thank you very much, everybody that joined us, wherever you are, on this side of the ocean, on that side of the ocean. If it's evening, so good night to everybody. If you're still like us, just afternoon, so enjoy the rest of your day. Think about what Guy was talking and go and buy his book. Okay. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Thank you.